studying hurricanes a long time. Most of my activity, I had my first flight into a hurricane in 1958, and I was at the University of Chicago with one of the top leading research people there. I was an Air Force officer. Then I got out of the Air Force. I went to graduate school, and my professor took me to Florida, and I studied hurricanes. I wrote my master's and PhD thesis on an inner core topic of the hurricane. And I've just been doing it since. I've had a lot of graduate students and things. I went to Colorado State in 1960, and we always wanted to know what the coming season was going to be, because the Atlantic Basin is one of the most variable of the different storm basins. There's some years you don't have many, other years a lot. Everybody wants to know, is the coming season going to be active or not? Well, we couldn't say anything. We didn't know. There was no good way of telling, but looking at teaching classes in the tropics and things, I began to see relationships before active seasons. El Niños, if you had one, you didn't have as many storms. If you had the cold water, the opposite of it, you had more. I found stratospheric winds. When they blew back and forth in a certain way, we had more or less storm. Found West Africa rain related. Sea surface temperatures, a lot of factors. The Atlantic, North Atlantic temperatures, and I just kept filing this, and I started issuing these forecasts, and then I've had a lot of graduate students, and I've included them with some of this work, and now I'm getting older, and I'm working a lot on a global warming issue. I think it's exaggerated greatly.
You mentioned about global warming. You don't think it's...
No, I think it's a great exaggeration, and I think we have so many problems in the world. People are saying this is the greatest problem facing mankind or humankind at the present time, and I don't think it is. And the problem is they've so brainwashed the public and our children and everyone that we're passing laws in state legislatures and the government that, roughly 20% of the energy by 2020 should come from renewable energy sources, wind, solar, geothermal, and things. And those resources are going to cost a lot more. For generating of electricity, probably renewable energy will cost 3 or 5 times what the fossil fuel energy will. And we'll hurt ourselves economically. India, China won't put restrictions in, and if we put restrictions in, and to carry it through, they're saying by 2050 we should have 80% by renewable energy. To me, that's just crazy. Because if we do all that, we'll pay a great economic price for it, and we won't significantly improve the environment.
With all that's going on in the world today, with besides hurricanes, you see about tornadoes in the Midwest, volcanoes, earthquakes, wildfires in the far west, floods, mudslides, etc. Do you think it's abnormal, higher than usual, or do you think it's because of technology where you hear about everything in an instant?
Yeah, I think there's always media sources to overhype things. If there's a big, we go right to them, we report it. People like to see reports of this and damage. I think it's overhyped. We have, I don't think we're having any more of these events than we've ever had, but they go through cycles. There are some, like we're in an active cycle for hurricanes now. We have been since 1995, and we're seeing a lot more, and we're likely to continue to see a lot more for the next 10, 20 years or so. But this is a multi-decadal cycle, and you see the lifetime of people. If they're in one cycle and it changes, then they say things are different than they ever were when I was born. That's a natural event. And there's always been droughts and floods and tornadoes and all these things. I don't think they're getting any worse. I think the overhyping that humans are causing changes, I don't think we are. We may be having a little bit alteration of the environment, but it's small and we don't know how we're doing it. Like land use, irrigation, land use, all these changes are occurring. That's probably affecting the climate as much as CO2. But I think the news media and people tend to overhype these things. It's natural to do it.
And what's your recommendation on how people should protect themselves?
Well, my recommendation is the same always. Do what the local emergency managers tell you, what the local government officials and emergency managers. Don't try to second guess them. If a hurricane is coming along, they are trained, they know more. They'll make mistakes at times, but still, they're the best source of things. So I would say, don't try to second guess things. If the emergency managers tell you to stay put, stay put. If they evacuate, evacuate. Do what the local government people tell you.
Right.
Now, the past few years, Florida hasn't really had any major hurricanes. Do you think that this coming season will be the same, or do you think it'll be greater?
Well, we can't. Nobody can tell. However, the probability of landfall this year in Florida is definitely higher than it's been the last four, from '06 through '09. It is higher, yeah, definitely higher, as we see it. Now, doesn't mean they're going to come, but if we take our forecast, the 10 active forecasts, or 12 or so that we make, and the 10 or 12 less active forecasts that we make, we compare those differences. Always we get many more landfalling storms in the 10 or 12 active forecasts than we do in the 10 or 12 inactive forecasts. But individual years often don't follow that. But as a statistical sense, it does work. So if we have an active season forecast out, which we do, and we're coming out with an updated forecast next Wednesday, June 3rd, the probability of landfall will be higher this year than it's been since 1995.
I have one more question. You mentioned that you wrote a thesis and did some papers on predicting hurricanes.
Well, I did my master's and PhD thesis a long time ago.
Right.
In the late 50s and early 60s, but on the inner core of the storm.
So how do you think, from going back to that time in the 50s and 60s, et cetera, to today, how has technology helped or affected the way that you and your team predict hurricanes?
Oh, a lot. It's affected, the satellite has been a big help. We had, the first satellite went up in 1960, but it wasn't very good. They've been perfecting that. Aircraft is perfected. The computer coming along to take data, store it and retrieve it, and all this is a great thing. Technology has really helped. However, the forecasting of the storm has gotten better, particularly the track prediction. The numerical models on the track prediction out 4, 5, 6 days have gotten tremendously better. But the intensity of the storm, how intense it is, hasn't improved so much. But yeah, things are just different. We know you don't have, like we used to miss storms, the Atlantic. There'd be stuff out in the middle Atlantic, you never saw it unless a ship came by or something. So the technology has helped a great deal, but in terms of you know, telling tomorrow how intense the storm's going to be, that hasn't gotten that greater, but the track has.